This is HOA Meltdown Moments. I did not raise my voice, I raised my evidence packet. You are blocking my mailbox. I said, you are blocking my mailbox. Joan Morgan looked at me like I had just insulted her entire bloodline, clipboard in one hand, a roll of blank orange stickers in the other, and said the words that would define the next 3 weeks of my life. I have all day, and so does my fine meter. She slapped an orange sticker on my truck's windshield, then another on my mailbox post, then stepped back and crossed her arms like she had just solved a murder case. I am a park ranger. I moved to Erie, Pennsylvania 6 months ago because I wanted quiet, rules that made sense, and a place where my daughter could visit without drama. What I got was the Pine and Powder Community Association, a neighborhood where everything requires a form and the form requires another form. Joan was the welcome committee chair, which meant she had decided that every single rule about snow, ice, shoveling, and winter safety was hers to enforce. The HOA name was printed on every sign, every notice, every angry email. And Joan acted like she owned the entire operation. The sticker said winter compliance tag in bold orange letters, but there was no violation written on it. No date, no signature, nothing. Just a blank orange circle that Joan treated like a warrant. She pointed at the snowbank next to my driveway and said that pile is a hazard. You did not shovel within 12 hours of the storm, and your truck is parked too close to the mail access zone. I looked at the pile. The plow had dumped it there 2 hours ago. I watched it happen. I told her that. She smiled and said we can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works. That was the line that should have warned me. I did not argue because I already had something in my pocket she did not know about. But I did not show my hand yet. I needed to see how far she would go. I peeled the orange sticker off my windshield, folded it, and put it in my coat pocket. Joan's smile vanished. She said you cannot remove a compliance tag. That is destruction of HOA property. I am adding that to your file. I asked what file. She tapped her clipboard and walked away, boots crunching in the snow, lanyard jingling with every step. I have a custody arrangement with my ex. Every other weekend, my daughter stays with me. It is the one part of my life that has to run perfectly. No chaos, no surprises, no excuses. The HOA knew my schedule because Joan made it her business to know everyone's schedule. She watched the driveway cameras, she tracked when cars came and went, she took notes. I am not paranoid, I have proof. She posted about me in the neighborhood group chat 3 days after the mailbox incident. The post said concerned neighbors have reported unsafe snow conditions at 42 Birchwood during last week's storm. The resident has refused to comply with winter safety guidelines. Please stay alert. My address, my name, my truck. All out there for 200 neighbors to see. The next day, I got a notice in the mail. Violation notice in bold at the top, but not all caps, just bold and underlined. It listed 4 charges. Failure to remove snow within the required time frame, obstruction of mail delivery access, unapproved snow pile placement, and refusal to cooperate with compliance inspection. The fine was $250, due in 14 days, and it said disputes must be filed within 48 hours or the fine becomes final. I looked at the date on the notice. It was backdated. The storm they were talking about happened 5 days ago, but the notice said I had been cited the day after the storm. I checked my mail log. Nothing. The notice was fabricated, and the date proved it. I called the management company. The woman on the phone said she would look into it and call me back. She did not call me back. I called again the next morning. Different person. He said my dispute file was open, but I needed to submit written evidence and pay a $50 administrative review fee. I asked where that fee was in the covenants. He said it was a new policy from the Winter Safety Committee. I asked who authorized the committee. He put me on hold for 6 minutes, then came back and said the board approved it at the last meeting. I asked for the meeting minutes. He said they were not available yet. Joan showed up at my house 2 days later with a tape measure, a camera, and a man I had never seen before. She said, "This is a compliance inspection. We are measuring your snow pile and documenting the hazard." I asked if she had a warrant. She laughed and said, "This is private property under HOA covenant. We do not need a warrant. You signed the agreement when you bought the house." The man with her did not say anything. He just took photos of the snowbank, the driveway, the walkway, and my front door. Joan measured the distance from the curb to the edge of the pile and wrote it down on her clipboard. Then she looked at me and said, "I have all day, and so does my fine meter." Second time, same line. I memorized it. I went to the gate the next morning to talk to the vendor technician who services the neighborhood access system. His name was Ray, and he had been working in the area for years. I asked him if the HOA kept logs of who accessed the community during the storm. He said yes, every entry and exit is timestamped with the resident code. I asked if he could pull the logs for my address. He said he could not give me the full file, but he could confirm whether my vehicle left during the time frame Joan was claiming. I gave him the dates. He checked his tablet and said your truck did not leave the neighborhood between 6 p.m. on the storm night and 10 a.m. the next morning. That is a 16-hour window. You were home the whole time. I asked if he would be willing to say that in writing. He said if you need it for a dispute, I can provide a statement. I have done it before for residents dealing with bogus fines. The timeline was falling apart. Joan's notice said I left snow piles uncleared during the storm and blocked the mail zone the morning after. Ray's logs proved I was home and my truck never moved. The plow created the pile, not me. I had photos from my phone with timestamps. I had the gate logs. I had the mail carrier's statement that the mailbox was never blocked. I started building the file. I printed everything. I organized it by date. I highlighted the contradictions. I sent a certified letter to the management company with copies of all the evidence and a formal request to withdraw the fine and investigate Joan's compliance inspections. The letter went out on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I got a call from the property manager. He said, "We received your dispute, we are reviewing it, but you need to understand that the Winter Safety Committee has discretion to issue fines for observed violations regardless of timestamps." I said that makes no sense. He said it is in the updated guidelines. I said, "Show me the updated guidelines." He said they are being finalized. That was the moment I knew they were making it up as they went. There were no updated guidelines. Joan was running a private enforcement racket, and the management company was either covering for her or they had no idea what she was doing. I filed a records request for all board meeting minutes, all winter policy documents, and all communications between Joan and the management company. The request went certified mail with a deadline of 10 business days. I paid for tracking. I wanted proof of delivery. Joan escalated. She posted in the neighborhood group chat again, this time with photos. The photos showed my driveway covered in snow, the mailbox surrounded by a berm, and my truck parked close to the curb. The caption said this resident continues to ignore safety protocols and is now disputing legitimate fines instead of addressing the hazard. The photos were real, but they were taken right after the plow dumped the berm. I checked the metadata. The timestamps were 30 minutes after the plow came through. She was photographing the mess before I even had time to shovel and calling it a violation. The management company sent me another notice. This one said my dispute file would close in 48 hours unless I paid the winter fines in full. $250 for the original violation, plus $50 for the administrative review, plus $100 for the follow-up inspection Joan conducted. $400 total. I did not pay. I sent a reply email with all my evidence attached and a clear statement that the fines were fabricated and Joan's inspections were unauthorized. I copied the entire board on the email. I wanted everyone to see it. The next morning, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. It was an attorney. She said her name was Lisa Chen and she represented the Pine and Powder Community Association. She said the board had asked her to review my dispute and she needed to ask me a few questions. I asked if she had seen my evidence. She said yes. I asked if she had seen Joan's timeline compared to the gate logs. She said yes. I asked what her opinion was. She paused, and then she said off the record, "You have a strong case, but the board is under pressure from residents who think the Winter Safety Committee is doing good work." I asked what that meant for my fine. She said I am recommending they withdraw it, but I cannot guarantee they will listen. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA drama because it is about to get even crazier. That was when I got the second escalation. Joan sent me a certified letter directly, not through the management company. The letter said she was forwarding my case to the County Code Enforcement Office for unsafe property conditions. She included photos, her inspection notes, and a statement that I had refused to cooperate with HOA safety measures. The letter was on Pine and Powder Community Association letterhead, but it was signed only by Joan, not the board president, not the property manager, just Joan. I called the County Code Enforcement Office. They had no record of any complaint from the HOA. Joan had not actually filed anything. She was bluffing, using fake threats to scare me into paying. I went back to Ray at the gate. I asked him if Joan had access to the entry logs. He said no. Only the management company and the board president have access, and they have to request it through me. I asked if Joan had ever requested logs. He said never, but she has been asking residents to report entry and exit times in the group chat, like she is building her own surveillance file. That was the twist. Joan was not just enforcing rules, she was running the Winter Safety Committee like a private police force with no authority. The board had approved a committee, but they had never authorized fines, inspections, or enforcement actions. Joan had taken a volunteer role and turned it into a weapon. I needed more proof. I filed a second records request, this time specifically asking for the board resolution that created the Winter Safety Committee, the scope of its authority, and any documents authorizing Joan to issue fines or conduct inspections. I sent it certified with a 7-day deadline. The management company did not respond. I sent a follow-up. Still nothing. On day 8, I got a call from Lisa Chen, the HOA attorney. She said we need to talk. Can you come to the management office tomorrow at 2 p.m.? I said yes. The management office was in a strip mall 20 minutes away. I walked in at 2 p.m. exactly. Lisa Chen was there, along with the property manager and one board member I recognized but had never spoken to. Joan was not there. Lisa said, "Thank you for coming. We have been reviewing your case and we have some concerns about the process that was followed." I said good, because I have concerns too. She opened a folder and pulled out a document. She said, "This is the board resolution that created the Winter Safety Committee. It was passed in October, but the scope is limited to public awareness and voluntary compliance reminders. There is no authorization for fines, inspections, or enforcement actions." I said so. Joan has been acting outside her authority this entire time. Lisa nodded and said yes, and the board was not aware of the extent of her actions until you filed your dispute. The property manager looked uncomfortable. He said, "We have been trying to coordinate with Joan, but she has been operating independently and we did not have full visibility into what she was doing." I said she fabricated timelines, backdated notices, and threatened me with code enforcement complaints she never actually filed. Lisa said, "We are aware, and we are addressing it internally." I said, "What about my fine?" She said the fine is being withdrawn in full. You will receive a written waiver and a formal apology from the board. I said, what about Joan? Lisa said that is a personnel matter and I cannot discuss it, but she will no longer be involved in compliance or enforcement in any capacity. I asked what would stop this from happening again. Lisa said the board is implementing new oversight procedures. All compliance actions will go through the management company and be reviewed by legal counsel before any fines are issued, and the Winter Safety Committee is being restructured with clear limits. I said I want it in writing. She said you will have it by the end of the week. I stood up and said one more thing. I want a no-contact directive for Joan. No emails, no calls, no group chat posts about me or my property. Lisa looked at the property manager. He nodded. She said we can include that in the settlement. I left the office with a promise and no paperwork. I did not trust it. I called my own attorney that afternoon. I explained the situation, the fabricated fines, the unauthorized inspections, the fake timeline, all of it. He said, you have a solid case for harassment and possibly defamation if the group chat posts damaged your reputation. Do you want to pursue it? I said not yet. I want to see if they follow through on the written waiver and the no-contact order. He said fair enough, but if they stall or if Joan contacts you again, call me immediately and we will file a formal complaint. 3 days later, I got a FedEx envelope. Inside was a letter from Lisa Chen on law firm letterhead. It said the Pine and Powder Community Association Board of Directors has voted to withdraw all fines and charges related to winter compliance inspections conducted in January. A full waiver is attached, and all records of the violations have been removed from your homeowner file. The waiver was signed by the board president and notarized. There was a second document, a no-contact directive addressed to Joan Morgan, stating that she is prohibited from contacting you directly or indirectly regarding any HOA matter. All future communications must go through the management company. It was also signed and notarized. I thought that was the end. It was not. Joan tried to contact me anyway. She sent an email 2 weeks later, subject line clarification needed, asking me to confirm that I had received the settlement documents and whether I intended to continue my records requests. I forwarded the email to Lisa Chen without replying. Lisa called me an hour later and said she violated the no-contact order. We are addressing it. Do not respond to her. I said I did not plan to. Lisa said the board is meeting tonight to discuss next steps. I will update you tomorrow. The next day, Lisa called again. She said Joan has been removed from the welcome committee and all HOA roles. The board has issued a formal cease and desist, and if she contacts you again, we will pursue a restraining order. I said good. Lisa said there is one more thing. The board is voting next month on a proposal to require actual evidence before fines can be issued, including third-party verification for any compliance inspections. Your case was the catalyst for that change. I said it should have been the rule from the start. She said I agree. The final showdown happened at the USPS mailbox cluster curb 3 weeks later. I was getting my mail when Joan pulled up in her car. She got out, walked over, and said I need to talk to you about the settlement. I said no. You are under a no-contact order. Leave me alone. She pulled out her clipboard and said I am allowed to talk to you if it is about official HOA business. I said this is not official, and you are not authorized to conduct HOA business anymore. She stepped closer and said you think you won, but the board is going to reverse the policy changes as soon as the heat dies down. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I said you are violating a legal order. Leave now, or I am calling the police. She saw the phone and her face went red. She said, you cannot record me without permission. I said I am on public property and you are harassing me. I can absolutely record you. A Erie Police Department deputy pulled up right then, unrelated, just checking the area. He walked over and said, is there a problem here? Joan froze. I said this woman is under a no-contact order and she is refusing to leave. The deputy looked at Joan and said, "Ma'am, you need to step back and leave the area." Joan said, "I have every right to be here." The deputy said, "Not if there is a court order. Do you have documentation?" She did not. She got back in her car and left. I filed an incident report with the sheriff's office that afternoon. I included the video, the no-contact order, and Lisa Chen's contact information. The deputy who responded at the mailbox included his own statement. 2 days later, I got a call from Lisa. She said Joan has been issued a formal trespass warning by the HOA, and the board has filed for a restraining order. If she contacts you again, call the police immediately. I said understood. Lisa said the board meeting is next week, the policy change vote is on the agenda, and I expect it to pass. I said I will be there. The board meeting was in the community clubhouse. About 40 residents showed up. The agenda included the Winter Safety Committee restructure and the new compliance verification policy. Joan was not there, but 3 of her supporters were. They argued that the policy would make enforcement too slow and that problem residents would take advantage of the delays. I stood up during public comment and said the old system allowed fabricated violations, fake timelines, and harassment. The new system requires evidence, which is how it should have worked from the start. The board voted. The new policy passed 5-2. The rule now required actual evidence before fines could be issued, including third-party verification for compliance inspections and timestamp documentation. Joan's entire enforcement method was dead. Ray, the gate technician, sent me a message the next day. He said, "I heard about the meeting, glad it worked out. If you need anything else, just let me know." I thanked him. He had been the witness I needed, showing up twice to explain the access logs in plain English, and giving me the proof that Joan's timeline was impossible. Without him, the dispute would have been my word against hers. The HOA sent a follow-up letter a week later. It included the updated winter safety guidelines, signed by the board president and the property manager. The guidelines were clear. Snow removal was required within 24 hours of a storm ending, but the clock started after the plow cleared the street, not after the snow stopped falling. Residents were not responsible for plow berms unless they blocked a walkway or created a safety hazard. Compliance inspections required advance notice, photographic evidence with timestamps, and third-party verification if the resident disputed the claim. Fines could only be issued after a hearing with the resident present. It was everything I had asked for. Joan tried one more move. She filed a small claims case against me for harassment and defamation, claiming I had posted false information about her in the neighborhood group chat. I had not posted anything. The case was dismissed at the first hearing because she could not provide any evidence. The judge told her that filing a frivolous lawsuit could result in sanctions, and she should consult her attorney before filing again. She did not file again. I kept the orange sticker. I framed it and hung it in my garage as a reminder. The blank compliance tag that Joan thought gave her authority to fine, inspect, and threaten residents, the sticker that started the whole fight, was now a trophy. I showed it to my daughter the next time she visited. She asked what it was. I said it is proof that rules do not mean anything if the people enforcing them are making it up as they go, and sometimes you have to fight back with paperwork and patience. She said that sounds boring. I said it was, but it worked. The settlement included a fine waiver in writing with a firm no-contact directive, exactly what I needed to close the case and protect my custody schedule from any more HOA drama. Joan's timeline was proven false with timestamps from the gate logs, the plow records, and my phone. The board had no choice but to admit the violations were fabricated. The funny karma moment came during the board meeting when one of Joan's supporters asked how the new policy would prevent residents from delaying compliance, and the board president read Joan's own words back to her. We can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works. And then he said that statement is exactly why we need this policy. Enforcement without evidence is not enforcement. It is harassment. The HOA voted to require actual evidence before fines, and Joan's entire system collapsed. I still live in the Pine and Powder Community Association. The Winter Safety Committee still exists, but it is run by a new volunteer with clear limits. Joan moved out 6 months later. I do not know where she went. I do not care. The neighborhood group chat is quieter now. People still complain about snow removal and ice hazards, but there are no more compliance tags, no more fake inspections, no more fabricated timelines. The rules make sense again. My daughter asked me last weekend if the HOA was still causing trouble. I said no, it is fine now. She said good, because I like visiting and I do not want to deal with any more drama. I said me neither. We built a snowman in the front yard. No one came by with a clipboard. No one measured the snow pile. No one took photos. It was just a normal winter day, the way it should have been from the start. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.